Hi,
Hello,
I'm Julian.
and I'm Tom.
We are Team Binge. We are here to talk about Severance Season 2, Episode 10. This is the finale, and this one was called Cold Harbor. Tom, let me just first congratulate you on a 100% finish rate for this podcast. You did a great job. We were sitting at 97% for quite a while, 96% for quite a while, but we finished it. You did it. Congratulations.
I'm so excited for the choreography and merriment.
Yeah, Jimmy, if you could cut in 30 minutes of a marching band playing and dancing, this podcast is going to be an hour and 30 minutes long, but why not add another 30 minutes of just a marching band playing?
Listen, if you would have told me going into this episode that I was going to hear Helly R try to motivate a marching band to join the indie revolution, I would have called you crazy.
Much like kiwi berries, the fruit, sometimes we need to ask ourselves not if we can, but if we should, you know? That's what I would say about this episode and marching bands and stuff. I don't want to play my hand too early, Tom. I enjoyed this episode. I'm glad we came to the finale and we got some answers that we were looking for. That's always good. It wasn't just like cliffhanger and like kicking the mystery down the road. But it was a long episode, Tom. And that's not a complaint. That's just, man, I love marching bands, you know? I really love them. What'd you think, Tom?
I enjoyed it, man. Like, yeah, it was definitely like a feature-length film in terms of timing.
Was it ever? Yeah.
But I mean, you could argue the show is filmed very much like a movie, so I'm here. I'm for it. But yeah, I'm with you, man. Like, we got so many answers to, I think, a lot of things that they did a good job hinting at in terms of what is macrodata refinement, what are they really doing, so kind of putting some of those pieces together, but still left a lot of a lot of questions about, like, Jane Egan and really what the idea of severance is. Like, we know that they're trying to do this, I guess, to eliminate pain in the world, but what does that really mean, and how does that integrate with the Egans and Keir and their ideology? It's still fascinating to me. And then obviously the cliffhanger we get of them running in the hallways. Like, what is that going to leave us for season 3? And I've got some thoughts and ideas, but we'll get to it at the end.
They were running to join the marching band, Tom. That's essentially the conclusion I came to. But let's roll through the episode and we can, I don't know, play the trombone in a couple of different places, which I'm proficient at. I did it in 7th grade, so I still remember how to use the little spit thing because the spit gets in the tubes and anyways, let's move on. All right, so the whole start of this is Mark, Cobell, Devin, and it's let's put a plan together. If you haven't finished Cold Harbor, then Gemma's still alive, we still have a chance. And they're like, cool. And so we've got that storyline happening. I did appreciate that they went back to this scene with James and Helly because I was afraid that was just going to be the end of the last episode and they were not going to address it. I'm not sure they really clarified much for me, but we do go back and James Egan creepily staring at Helly and being like, I was cross with you after your speech. He was so cross, Tom, that he threw a tin of candies. Break this down for me. What is happening between these two?
So I think, like, when he says, like, you got tricked in the last episode, like, he realizes he's talking to Helly here. And I think the last time he talked to him they were in the bathroom and, like, Helly or Helena was switched and she was Helly and had a conversation with the guy. His line about throwing a tin of candies, I think, while very wasteful, wasting candies, the idea of it being in a tin is also very funny. It just reminds me like great grandparents and how they would refer to candies.
Right.
And then Ellie's response of like, man, you're effing weird is just incredible because it's exactly what the audience is thinking. But ultimately, I think this scene is just the weird James trying to understand who Helly and Helena are because he doesn't see Keir in Helena, but he does seem to see her in Helly. Like when she kind of go ahead.
Yeah, so my question is, and he mentions it, as most fathers do, he says, well, that's a terrible joke. He says, I do not love my daughter. And then he said she does not have Keir in her. Mm-hmm. And so, like, the Keir that he sees in Helly, is this, like, the fiery personality of Helly who, like, I don't know, spits in Milchick's face essentially and is like constantly rioting in the down down deep. I did not understand, because how often is he observing Helly other than in the bathroom and in this moment that he can identify that she has Kier in her?
Well, and we get in the end of the episode where he has like his own elevator that takes him to a room that is just a TV monitoring stuff, right? So he could have been monitoring all the things that have been happening on the severed floor and who Helly is as a person down there versus Helena. And we've seen it plenty of times of disappointment for Helena, the way she eats her eggs, the way she just generally acts. And he sees more of Kier in Helly. So that's what kind of makes me think about maybe potential things of where we might go for season 3, because if he's going to kind of change his mindset and not really worry about Helena in terms of like taking over the company or becoming like the next Kier or Egan, maybe it's Helly he's going to turn to.
Did we ever watch Helly just down a bunch of raw eggs during the season? And he was like, that's my girl. She's got so much Kier in her.
I can't remember how she, they did have the egg party, right, at one point. So I can't remember how she took that, if she destroyed them or if they were her favorite.
We spend more time with Jaime Egan in this episode than I ever need to in my whole life. He's so weird. Like, I understand that's the character. That's not a knock on the show. That's just like, this is... If I was alone in an office and this guy showed up and he was like, you've been lying to me, I would also respond in the way that Helly responds.
Well, and he responds in such like, and we get like a literal robot later, but he responds in such like a robotic way. Like he doesn't seem like a single consciousness, right? Like I still go to the idea of like maybe this Jaime Egan is a consciousness of like all the previous Kiers or something like that, which is why he's so weird and goofy, and maybe he's like changing consciousness is throughout, like he's severed. Like there's got to be more to this, and that's what I'm assuming and hoping they'll explore in season 3.
I think old rich people just get weird, Tom. I think that's what it is.
Also possible.
Speaking of old rich people, we talk with Cobell, Mark, and Devin, and so the plan that they come up with is that they're going to get Mark to the severed floor, and then he is going to become his outie once he gets to the testing floor. And so I appreciate them kind of explaining this, because we did have this conversation about like, hey, when he goes to the birthing place, which Mark is he going to be? And so they do kind of delineate how this all works, which is nice. But essentially it's you have to finish the file, and then you have to get yourself to, your innie has to get you to a position where your outie can save Gemma. And I'm just going to say this again, saying innie and outie like this is really weird, and it makes me uncomfortable. It's like we're talking about belly buttons, and I don't like it, Tom.
All right, noted.
But
keep doing it.
Yeah, I mean, there's no other way. So we have this moment where they are now talking with innie Mark. And Innie Mark's like, well, like if you save Gemma, and outie Mark's, what happens to me? And they're all like, oh yeah, you die. Maybe we should add a better, I don't know. It's kind of like they thought about this, because they then give him the tape recorder. They're like, let's hope he doesn't ask. He's not going to ask, right? He's just going to die. And they're like, yeah. I don't know. This is literally like, once again, I hate diving into this because it's not real, but it's like falling asleep. Like, it's not really a death. You're just, there is a chance you will come back, Mark. But all of this leads to the camcorder, essentially a Zoom call via tape recorder. And I thought this was interesting.
Yeah, no, I loved this whole sequence and concept of him being able to just step outside, take the picture or take the video of himself, and then have this conversation. And like the way it was shot, I thought was so great, where he's outside and he's always kind of filmed from the left, like outie Mark, and then he's inside next to the fire, kind of filmed from the right. So you always kind of know who is who as they're kind of going back and forth. I thought it was just, as all this show is, just shot incredibly brilliantly. But I also was kind of bummed because that, I think I talked about this at the end of last pod, where they talked to like the main writer and showrunner, and he was kind of saying that, oh, Mark is going to this room so he can now talk to himself. And I was like, I didn't get any of that in terms of how they left it in the last episode. But I mean, he clearly was giving us a little nod or Easter egg to what actually happened in this one. So
Sure.
I feel like the concept of them talking back and forth would have been maybe more impactful if I didn't know that.
Right. Do we give Adam Scott his daytime Emmy right now for acting against himself in this scene? I appreciate how it slowly went from like, hey man, hope you're doing well, like, sorry I put you in this prison, and then the other guy being like, oh yeah, hey, nice to meet you too, this is cool, not really a prison, and the other guy being like, oh, well, it's kind of a prison, and I need to save my wife, and the guy like, well, I also love someone too, so it like slowly gets more like angry and aggressive, and I just thought like, and I don't know if I've said this before, but if I met myself in like the real world, I would dislike myself in such a way. And I feel like this was a very visual representation of, oh yeah, you'd get annoyed if you had to deal with you too. And so I enjoyed this. I also thought the camcorder had just an incredible battery life. These things are, I'm assuming, a lithium, but don't fly with it. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, smart. But yeah, I'm with you, man. Like the back and forth was great of Innie Mark saying like, listen, I don't live in a nightmare. Like we make our lives whole. Like we make it feel whole. And how it very quickly digresses into them like out and out shouting and stuff at each other.
Right.
Because they both have very different ideas for what would happen after Gemma is freed, which I think from an Innie Mark perspective is very fair. Like you can't just, come out, quote unquote, be reintegrated because you don't really know what that means. He wouldn't really have any of the memories in terms of the quantity of memories that Outie Mark has. I don't understand how Outie Mark is even trying to position this. And it eventually ends with that line of like, can't you just trust me? And the idea of like, can you trust yourself is very fascinating.
Right. I do like angry Adam Scott when he's like, well, you're a liar. Like, maybe you're just trying to trick me. I thought that was all great.
There was a great bit where Outie Mark mentions Helly, but instead of saying Helly, he says Heleny.
Which is not a name. It's like I'm going to mistakenly say a name that doesn't exist. It's almost like he's purposefully being mean, but go on.
But it's a great kind of callback to exactly what Helena did with Gemma, right? Where they met at the diner and like Helena mispronounced or missaid the name of Gemma.
Sure.
So it's just kind of right back at him. He's and it really kind of creates that rift. It's like you care so little, you don't even know like the love of my life in here.
Right. It's dismissive. Yeah. It's dismissive, and yeah, I appreciate that was the turning point where this all went wrong. But my spouse also pointed out there's kind of a cool contrast of one of them being like next to a fireplace and kind of being in the warmth, and then the other one being outside in the snow. Right. And just the back and forth between, two sides of the same coin, and then the two different environments that they were in. It was really well shot. I don't know where I fall in terms of watching a screen. It's never been something I love, but in this day and age, we all have to live with it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Multi-screen experience.
Right. This leads to the conversation with Cobell, because she's like, let me talk to him. And then we get an explanation where she's like, don't you realize what MDR does? All those numbers are your wife. Those numbers that you feel are woe, frolic, malice, dread. And Tom, I got confused here. Not that I'm dumb, but I do get confused.
Okay. I think I understand this part, so go for it.
They're like, you're building her. Well, she existed as a person, and then she goes into these severed rooms. So are we to think he is building the person that goes into that's in the severed rooms? Help me understand, Tom. Explain it to me like I'm 5.
Okay. You have a lemonade stand.
Yeah. Okay. Explain it to me like I'm 3.
No, but I think the Jedi, and we've talked about this already on the podcast, because I think they pointed it out quite a bit with like the little boxes, and when they put them in, you can kind of see the acronyms for woe, frolic, malice, and dread. So, and what they eventually say, or Cobell says, is that every innie that you're creating, or every file you're doing, is creating a new innie or a new consciousness for her. So she cannot go into a new room until you've compiled this new consciousness for her. And I think as we think about the rooms that we saw Gemma go in, and what we believe the severance procedure or Lumen is trying to do is trying to kind of block out human pain, right? So like each room gets more and more painful for the person. So it starts at you just going into the dentist, and then it gets her writing thank you notes, and then it ups it to her on a plane, and the plane's going down, and like how she's going to react to that. And then it ends where we get to Cold Harbor, where it's like the most painful experience of a person's life of losing a child, and will Severance hold up to that? So they have to be able to, build these, use the tempers and MDR to build like her consciousness, because the consciousness is, as Keir, I think, explains, it's like their soul. So they're building a different soul for her to be able to kind of get to that next level of like pain management. I don't know how else to say that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess I always kind of thought, like, when you walk into a new room after you're getting severed the first time, you're just a blank slate. But it sounds like with this procedure that they are essentially downloading, like, a consciousness for that room. I don't know, Tom. It's real difficult to wrap the whole brain around it, but I appreciate you explaining it to me like I was too. This all leads to Cobell really dumping some hard truths on any Mark in terms of, listen, you are not going to end up with Helly. She is an Egan. There's not going to be any honeymoon for you. You need to die so Outie Mark and Gemma can live and be nerd teachers and listen to records and stuff. So
what's your thought on Cobell? Like, what do you feel like her angle is here? Because we kind of left her side story. Like, is she still trying to burn Lumen to the ground? Does she still want to see Cold Harbor finished? What's your thoughts?
So I think she's playing a middle road here. I think she's using these guys in order to complete Cold Harbor and, help Mark out. But I don't think it is completely altruistic in terms of, like, she's just trying to help them. I think there is also an angle here where she is trying to not necessarily destroy Lumen, but get in there where she'll be able to either take it over or reclaim her intellectual property, something along those lines. So I think she's playing both sides. The way they shoot her with the close-up, and she's also terrifying, it would be easy to say that she's a bad guy, but thus far she seems to be legitimately trying to help them. I also have questions. I still have questions about Devin as well.
Yeah.
But what do you think? What do you think her motivations are?
No, I tend to kind of agree with that. I mean, at the end of the day, we find out this is her life's work, so she wants to see it through fruition, and like Cold Harbor is, I guess, the final step for it. So the way that maybe she's going about it, Cold Harbor will be completed, but it's going to cause chaos at Lumen, and maybe she will get it in to get back into the good graces of Lumen. I do want to bring this up now as we're talking about Cobell, because I'm like, we see her for the rest of the season here. Like, do you have any thoughts about, the one thing we don't really know much about is like Mark or Helly's like mother and like who they were born from. One of the things I think that's been theorized online, especially from the last episode where Cobell enters this birthing area suite, she talks about James like siring multiple children, or this is another, she's pregnant with another one of James. Do you think there's any possibility that, because Cobell seems to have an affection for Mark, right? Baked him cookies, even has a line, I think, in this one where she says like she cares for him, that maybe she is Mark's mom, like with James. So like maybe Mark could potentially be an Egan, and it's why he's been such a focal figure throughout the whole series. Think that makes any sense?
I don't know. I don't know if Mark is an Egan. I don't know if Cobell is his mother. I like the theory. My question is, like, Mark, if you look at Mark's importance, like, why does Mark have to finish Cold Harbor? So he is creating consciousness for Gemma, his wife. Is the relationship of husband to wife the reason why he's got to be the one that builds it? Is he just really good with numbers and it's coincidence that it's his wife? Is he an Egan and therefore, that's why he has to be the one involved? I question why Mark is important. Considering there are other people that move the little numbers around. And are those guys in MDR, or the other three, were they all working on Gemma's consciousness as well? So, like, why are they involved?
Yeah, I think all the data refiners, like we didn't really get a whole lot of refining this season. It was more so in the first one, but they were all working towards and putting the stuff in buckets, and that's why like Dylan won the waffle party. Like he was the one that was getting through it a lot quicker. But I guess the idea being the severity of Cold Harbor and it being the loss of their child, it had to be marked to finish it. But I'm with you, man. There's still a lot of questions as to why and who's doing this, because we also know that there's other MDR departments and other buildings and other things. So I can't imagine every one of these has a abducted wife that they're experimenting on, but who knows?
Yeah, that's maybe this is just their MO. They're like, all right, we're gonna do the abducted wife one again. They're like, okay. The end of the conversation where Mark's like, listen, if the next thing I see isn't the inside of the severed floor, I'm gonna start murdering fellows. It was essentially what he got to. I appreciated that threat. Mm-hmm. I'm sure it's probably exhausting to like keep being brought back to the camcorder. I actually feel worse for Audi Mark because he had to be in the cold, but it is what it is. There, when Mark comes to, he finds himself in front of this glorious painting. And I mean, props to whoever does those in this show. Like, you don't really think about it, but a human being or AI, I don't know, or a severed consciousness, I don't know, created that painting, made it, and put it on the wall. And it's like got all the characters. It's my spouse was like, "What's he doing at that computer?" There's like a face of ecstasy.
I know, right? His hand is to the sky. Yeah. It's a lot. The name of this painting is The Exulted Victory of Cold Harbor.
Incredible.
So it's like every character we've essentially seen throughout the entire series, like all the way down to, I think, some of the people that Mark had a dinner party with in like the first season are like in this painting. And it kind of takes place at Wolves Hollow, kind of like that waterfall. And you see kind of all the Egans with Helena right in the middle, all kind of looking down and watching Mark finish this. It's quite the painting, and you know this has to exist somewhere. And like at the end of production, like who's taking this home? Is this gonna be at Ben Stiller's house?
Oh, I would hope so. I'd put it right in the entryway of my mansion if I was Ben Stiller. Helly quickly arrives, and we get a reunion. Which, Tom, did we discuss because you kind of have to go two ways on this show. You either want Mark to end up with Gemma or you want Mark to end up with Helly, and I know they're different Marks. But is there a relationship that you are more emotionally invested in? It feels like the internet really wants Mark and Helly, but maybe that's just by the fact that we hadn't spent a ton of time with Gemma. I'm interested to know where does your heart lie, Tom?
I think the whole show is more centered around Mark and Helly. So I would imagine that the majority of people want to see, even though as impractical as it is, want to see them make it somehow. But
sure, they want an adulterous relationship to win out. I understand, Tom.
It's not adulterous. They're both, I don't know.
He's married.
It's questionable.
He's married. He was married to Gemma. Although she's dead, so that probably, if there's a certificate of death, that means they're divorced. So he's divorced. I don't know. I'm going to have to return to the good book and see what it says.
I mean, there is a world where they could both have it, right? Like, Mark could still technically have his outside world and be with Gemma and have his inside world. It would just not be, like, with Lumen, right? Like, maybe they can take the technology and make some other use out of it. And Helly and Mark could have a relationship while she goes to work, or they go to work.
No, Tom. That's not. I know the good book says no to that. Okay. I don't know much, but I know that's not allowed.
We got to ask Fields. He knows all about how the religion takes the idea of
right. He'd have to take this to his priest.
I do like how we get to the next room, right? Like where like the hallways all darken, and then the lights light up the path to the MDR office for him to finish his work. And what do they find there, Julian?
Oh, they find something that's not at all creepy. They find a animatronic statue of an Egan who's got an envelope with Mark's name on it, And that pop-up envelope, I guarantee they've made these. These are going to exist in real life. It is a pop-up waffle party for his 25th file completion.
Incredible. And it ends with love, Mr. Milchick.
Love Mr. Milchick was, yes, I'm glad you noted that too. So weird. So weird. And then, is it Mark turns to Helly or Helly turns to, I think Mark turns to Helly and he's like, I know why they're doing this. And I was like, do you? Because I'm still confused, but
they both have they both have some new information that they kind of want to talk to each other about, but they realize that they're being closely monitored in this situation, so you have to be mindful of how and what they talk about.
This is the same statue that Milchick talks to later, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
And it's the same one that was like in like the Hall of Vegans or whatever when they did like their tour in season 1.
Okay. I've got thoughts, so when we get to that, we can talk it through. Milchick and Dylan. We finally get Dylan back into the show. I miss Dylan. I love Dylan. So the last thing that Dylan did in the previous episode was resign, or at least the innie resigned, and then he gets this response from his outie. And the way Milchick delivers it and then sprints out of the room, I was like, I'm sorry, did he hand him a bomb? What is going on here?
I'm pretty sure that Milchick, the only reason he is staying around at Lumen is so he can do these like musical dance parties, choreograph a merriment. This is what he lives for. So he put down that envelope and immediately got into costume.
He's so good at it. Like, that actor is incredible.
Love it.
So we get a lovely letter between the Dylans. It has 3 points, Tom. I'll let you handle them.
Yeah. The first point being a great one. F you, which is
so
Dylan. Classic Dylan line. Yeah. Exactly. And then secondly saying like, yep, I get it. And that he ultimately hopes that she sees in him what she saw in any Dylan. And then ultimately says like, hey, he wants any Dylan to stay and still be a part of Lumen and exist.
Sure.
So it was very well written and very interestingly put together, and really rounds about Dylan's character and finally gave him some actual interaction with his outside self.
Right. I did think this was a lovely moment. I'm on record as saying I don't really care about the Dylan and the Gretchen of it all, but I did like how they solved this, and I'll watch Milchick deliver an envelope and sprint out of a room any day of the week. We find a quick cut here where we flash down to the testing floor, and it's Gemma, and she's opened her closet, and her outfit for the day, the show very rightly does this for us, is like, hey, this was her last day before the alleged car accident and her death, and so they're putting her in her original clothes. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. So these are clothes that her outie would recognize, but when she goes into the room, I guess it's just setting it all up for the crib scene, which was heartbreaking. But
yeah. And it's interesting, too, because this is like the only dress that she had of modern wear, right? Everything else was like seemingly in the 60s or 70s. So
sure.
I'm still very confused by the timing and technology of all these experiments they're doing on her.
Sure. This cuts us to the lovely moment between Mark and Helly back at their desks. And Helly is doing the right thing, which is kind of convincing Mark, hey, you need to save Gemma, like maybe reintegration will work, like she's down there, they're going to kill her, all these things. And when they say they're going to kill her, I have had to redefine what kill means in this show, because there are people that are real killed, like Drummond later in this episode, and then there is the idea that an innie is killed, just meaning they are never going to let that like consciousness exist or walk into a room. And so, when they said they were going to kill Gemma, my thought was, all right, like real murder. But really what they're going to do is just, I don't know, put her in like a cryogenic chamber and send her into space. I
would argue with this Gemma, they probably would real kill her, right? Because she's already dead in the outside world. You can't just necessarily like let her go. So in her case, she probably would be terminated.
Tom, I just gave him a solution. Put her in a cryogenic chamber and send her into space, and she can live forever. Just like that dumb show that we watched, The 3 Bodies Problem. There you go. I've spoiled it for all of you. Congratulations. Don't watch it. It was dumb. Okay, so, and these two are, once again, lovely moment. You can see, like, Mark acting the crap out of this scene. Same with Helen. And I like how they just shoot like her eyes over the cubicle.
Right.
And he's like, but I want to live with you. We get this conversation about time. And the kicker of a argument winner is when Helly's like, listen, but I'm her, Mark. And I was like, what does that mean? And I'm assuming she means you can't live with, like, there's no moving forward because I'm an Egan, essentially, right?
Yes, exactly. It's not like some sort of reveal that she's been Helena down there the whole time kind of a thing. This is just she's come to the realization that it's just not feasible and it can't happen.
Because she is Helena Egan, and with that means, she's not always going to be on the severed floor. So, Tom, they can't both exist. She just proved it. So where you're like, oh, both relationships exist, everyone should be happy. Not everyone is supposed to be happy all the time, Tom. We should all suffer a little bit. You know what I mean?
That's the moral of the show, exactly.
Yes. It's like a Cormac McCarthy book. We're all going to die, and none of it matters. Boom. All right.
Well, we said it before, too. This is your house motto. Suffer silently.
Yeah, we suffer silently. Yes, we do. You can drink a little bit. That's the, fine print at the bottom.
It's not silent. It's more like glass or ice cubes hitting glass. That's the real noise. Yeah.
Which we've started recording during the day, and it's really taken my consumption down quite a bit. All right, let's move on. We have Helly and Mark having a moment where they're discussing. I didn't get this equator. I'll see you at the equator. They're talking about places, but I guess because they're innies, they don't know where those places exist. And all of this is ticking down when he gets to 99%. And I wish we had more time. Was this a callback to a I know the internet's going to get mad at us. Was this a callback to a previous conversation where they're talking about places?
Yes, I think it's one of the initial questions that Mark on the intercom is talking to Helly as she's waking up on that conference room table. Hey, I guess what's the first U.S. city that you remember? And she says Delaware. So that's what they kind of start the conversation by saying Delaware. But saying meet you at the equator is obviously doesn't really make a whole lot of sense because it's not a very specific point on a map. But the idea of equator is just fantastic for this show because is it supposed to represent the severed floor? Because that is the equator between the real world and the testing floor. Is it supposed to be just the difference between that door that they eventually meet at the end, which is my assumption. The equator is where he pushes Gemma out of the severed floor. She kind of becomes normal Audi Gemma, and that's where they kind of end up meeting. But it's an interesting conversation for sure.
I just thought they liked warm weather, so they wanted to meet at the equator. You went
tropical environment.
Yeah, you went real deep into that. And I guess it's at the end of a relationship, you start to think of the beginning. And so they're just having these moments where they're trying to hold on to whatever they can. She finally slips him the directions to the testing floor as they together click 100%. And
beautiful.
The lights go out.
Man, when these lights go out and it starts playing that music, I just had a flash memory of when I was a kid watching Phoenix Suns game and the guy coming on here's the starting lineup for your Phoenix Suns. The music was incredible.
Yeah, they were playing the Jock Jams #1 song.
Yeah.
And this leads to the robot talking and Milchick doing a late night routine with him, and it gets weird. Their comedic timing is a little bit off. I don't know. This was interesting to watch, but I was like, what are we doing, show?
It's actually a slight callback to when we had maybe Funke, of the other MDR department. She talks about our department, it wasn't just wax statues, it was robots.
Sure.
So now we're seeing the animatronic version of Kier here. And he does one turn where he creepily turns his head and looks at Milchick and says, "Thanks for the feedback, Seth." I'm that was just terrifying. And I'm are they having a live conversation? Is this thing AI? Does it have a consciousness? I was super confused and terrified the whole time.
This all leads back to Dwight saying the robot should have a 6-foot cord because then it can't escape and kill us all. Smart. It needs to be plugged in. Tom, a marching band appears. And I'm just going to say I loved the Milchick portion of it. This marching band thing went on for just so long. So long. And I don't know if that was the point, but I was All right, I got it. Like, I don't know. This was a lot of marching band.
Yeah, the choreography and merriment, I guess, reward from our completing this was a bunch, and it was out of nowhere, and I couldn't help but just giggle as I'm watching these scenes because it was just so out of left field and so hilarious. There is a quick like nod to this though, like in the like, if you look at all the instruments that they're playing, they're all like white, and we've seen obviously the O&D department like 3D print all this stuff. And so obviously these instruments all came from O&D. And then even in the opening credits, we see like that coffee cup of Irv. It was like his Irv mug, and you see a bunch of these like white instruments like flowing out of it. So it's like a cool little like nod and kind of Easter egg they kind of gave us in the credits. But it was fun. I agree, it probably went on a little bit too long, but now we know that they have a specific merriment department, and maybe these were the 4 people that were doing the waffle dance party for Dylan in season 1.
Sure. And there are some quick cuts while Milchick is marching banding and just being super rad. He's got just those high knees and those high elbows like he's the music man.
Yeah.
We get a quick cut of Egan being brought up to watch the computer for they call it like a efficacy test, and then Gemma being moved to Cold Harbor. And it's, it's all brilliantly. I just needed less marching band. That's all, Tom.
That's fair. Fair enough. I would also argue that everybody in this room now has tinnitus because this is a very enclosed space to have a lot of those loud instruments going. And at the very end where it has like the 100% mark, like cue cards they kind of hold up to the ceiling for apparently nobody outside of us as the audience, was just perfect.
Tom, great question. We're not in a stadium. Who was that for? Like, that took me out of it a little bit. I'll say that much. But
agreed.
In the end, they, much like Casablanca, they're like, see you at the equator. And this leads to her, stealing the radio from Milchick and him going. She creates a diversion, essentially.
Exactly. Yep.
And so Mark's following the directions. It's all very frantic. The whole time there's just marching band music pumping through the speakers. And Milchick gets locked in the bathroom. I did appreciate that Helly was like, hey, can I get a little help here to this marching band where, they have conservatively been practicing this for 3 months and this is their moment. Helly, they're not going to help you hold the bathroom door. Like, let them get through the song,
I feel like she could at least borrow one of the trombones or whatever and then use that to prop it up and somehow lock the door. But yeah, she was on the wrong side of this door to try to keep it from opening. She just had to pull. And then who comes in to save the day? Our boy Dylan, the hero, with the snack machine.
With the snack machine. So good. All of this is happening while Gemma is led to Cold Harbor, and we find out that it is her, I guess, disassembling the baby crib. And so, to your point, Cold Harbor is just like the worst pain a parent or a person could feel is the loss of a child, and that's the representation of. And I appreciated the callback to Mark when he was disassembling the crib, and you had to point out it wasn't him assembling it, it was him disassembling it, because I was very confused. But
and as she's in there too, the very first thing Dr. Maurer says is who are you? And she says, I don't know. So again, very reminiscent of both Mark and Helly waking up on the table and them going through that series of questions, but they're just trying to see immediately, did this crib jog a memory or something in Audi Gemma's mind, because it certainly would have if she wasn't severed.
So this is about the moment where the show hits the NOS button on the car and drives down the crazy town road, because we have Drummond showing up, and he goes to this secret room where we have the mammalian nurturables lady, the goat lady. And,
Lauren.
Okay, sure. And she brings an offering, which is a tiny goat. Tom, what in sweet Kier's name was happening in this room? Why do they need to sacrifice goats? What's the blood for? I don't understand. I understand Old Testament, but I don't understand New Testament Kier killing goats. What's going on here?
I feel like this is just kind of like the satanic ritual. Like we finally figure out, I guess that's what these goats are here for. They're not like clones. They're not to put consciousness in. I guess they are doing some testing to see which has the most of those 9 principles because they need to, I guess, sacrifice one that has something specific. But I guess it's supposed to guide Gemma to Kier's door. I mean, I don't think there's a whole lot to take into this other than this is just weird, creepy cult behavior. And they feel like they have to, like it's been going on for centuries in history of using the symbol of a goat to sacrifice to bless some other thing happening.
And this is where we get the line where Kier's eternal war against pain. And so it just reiterates that all of the stuff they're doing with Severance is like his way of trying to remove pain from the human experience.
What happened in his childhood? What's so painful? I want to know Kier's childhood. What is the pain he's trying to erase?
He probably touched the iron when his mom like left it on the ironing board, and he's still being a little kid about it. I don't know. I
Speaking of kid, I think the one thing they do mention, I didn't even put it together, but like a baby goat is called a kid. So it kind of recontextualizes the idea we saw Cobell's yearbook and the school was like the fighting kids. Like maybe it's referring to baby goats instead of actual children.
Oh, that's pretty dope. Yeah. And before you graduate, you have to put one of those steel bolts through a kid's head. And by kid, I mean baby goat. Thanks, Tom. You know who loved kids? Michael Scott. Michael Scott loved kids. He was a little kid lover, you know?
Yeah. Didn't he have he had like a school that he gave money to or promised them college education that didn't come to fruition? It kind of reminds me of that.
Yeah, that's a little bit different.
Scott's Tots. There it is.
Scott's Tots. Let's talk about The Office for a little while so we don't have to talk about the weirdness of sacrificing a goat.
It was great to get Gwendolyn Christie back, right? I was hoping we would get more of her, and she is lovely.
Sure. They had to shoot it so that Drummond looked as tall as her, but I'm sure he's a large fella, but I think she had like a foot on him. I don't know. I found this whole like violent struggle in the hallway that this leads to, it was a lot. There was a lot of blood, Tom. I would have wished it was goat blood, but instead it's Drummond's blood. I don't know.
They really upped the ante. Yep.
They did. Anyways, we don't need to spend any more time on this. It leads to Mark stumbles into this. Drummond beats him up for a little while. Drummond's like a Marvel villain. He's like grabs Mark by the leg and swings him into a door. I was like, I don't know if you've ever swung a child, but it's exhausting. I don't think you're swinging Adam Scott, fully around. But in the end, he gets...
Just to clarify, you're not swinging your children into walls. You're just swinging them around for play, correct?
Tom, I'm doing whatever they ask, if that's what they enjoy.
Just being a good dad.
Yeah, I'm just being a good dad, Go to sleep, kids. I thought this all leading to him holding Drummond hostage and going on the elevator and then like coming to with his finger on the trigger.
Whoops.
Just a bad beat for our guy Drummond. And also probably pretty confusing for Mark coming to being covered in blood. But
yeah, what is going on with this like cattle prod type weapon? It was a lot, and definitely kind of ups the ante because we really hadn't had like a big murder or something like this since the first season, right? That one guy that Ragabi killed. So
I've never forgotten, Tom. I'm still holding a candle for the head of security that got murdered back then.
Poor guy.
Yeah. All right, and the whole time it feels like a marching band is playing during all of this, which adds to the violence. And we get a cut back to Gemma. She's taking the crib apart, and we get the line, "The barrier is holding." And I was like, all right, so that's what they're doing with her.
Yeah, you still get Dr. Maurer kind of like overseeing this. And I don't know if we talked about it, but like we do have James also in that secret room or whatever watching all this unfold. So
right.
Again, I don't know if he's just observing it and wants to see what happens. Is this the completion of the Severance procedure and they now know it's fully good to go? Or again, I don't know. Maybe there is more to this because we still don't know, like that mention of the revolving, I think in season 1, that like, I guess all these Egans go through. I still don't know what that means. And I'm assuming that's going to be a season 3, 4, 5, whatever arc.
Sure. I thought they were dedicated to like 3 seasons in terms of the story. We'll get into it later.
Yeah.
I just was glad they didn't show us watching Egan watch her while he's like cutting his own hair. And he's like, make her eat a raw egg. He's so creepy. He bothers me so much. All right. This leads to the Independence Day president trying to rally Earth, where Helly gives a speech to the marching band. And once again, Helly, they're not listening to you. They love playing music. They've been playing it for conservatively an hour while you guys have been fighting.
Yes. But I do appreciate and love her speech where she's trying to rally everybody. And I mean, we get it to the end. It seemed to work.
Did it? She's like, they give us half a life and they think we won't fight for it. And everyone's like, 1, 2, 3, 4. I hated all of it.
I guess the idea of like, if Helly can really turn all of these people, like this could be a big backfire for Lumen, right? You're bringing a whole army of people to now potentially be on Mark and Helly's side.
Right. What are college football teams going to do when no one plays at their halftime show, you know?
Yeah.
Golly, the world will collapse. I liked this moment where Mark finally gets to Cold Harbor, and it's like he gets stabbed in the finger, and they're like, nah-uh-uh, nah-uh-uh. And then he gets to use Drummond's blood that's soaked into his tie in order to get into the room. I was like, this is brutal.
That was pretty great. I also like before he gets to the door too, like the nurse, was this Andrew Bernhard, like kind of runs in and tries to stop him, and he like has no idea what he's doing with his gun, but he's like pointing it at her and just chasing her around with it. I thought it was comedic and great. Yeah,
he's like, I've killed before, I'll kill again, and the rod is already out. He hasn't even recharged it.
It's just a stick at that point.
Sure. The reuniting of Mark and Gemma, I thought was beautiful. I did find it like, oh, she doesn't know who he is. He's covered in blood. This has got to be weird for everyone.
Yeah.
But I did appreciate how this was all shot.
It was all fantastic. And like, yeah, throughout this whole sequence, there's essentially 4 different versions of them having these conversations as they go through these doors and these elevators. And then eventually Gemma like gets out of the severed floor. It's a wild sequence and very fun. And like all the while, like James is watching this on the screen and he's not too thrilled about it.
No, he's just screaming the F word, cutting his hair, eating raw eggs, because he's one of those people that eats when he's disappointed, Tom. So he's just sucking down yolks. Ugh, gross. All right.
Like Ben Stiller in Dodgeball, right?
Right, exactly.
He eats his feelings at the end.
His feelings. We have a montage. Montage is the wrong word, but they're running through the hallway. There's all the music and the lights. And this is after, I believe, he has let Gemma go out the door. And we have this, like, he's about to go. And then Helly shows up. And he's, like, looking back and forth. And he's looking back and forth. And he's looking back and forth. And I was like, sir, this TV show is an hour and 20 minutes long. Make up your mind. Did you think he was going to go with Gemma at any point, or did you think he was returning to Helly?
I don't know. I'll just say I loved this sequence of them making their escape. I do want to mention before we can get to like the decision that he ultimately makes here is as they're going down that first elevator, I guess going up the testing floor elevator, Dr. Maurer like is chasing and screaming at him saying, you'll kill them all. And it made me think of like, is he saying you're going to kill all the Egans? Are you going to kill all the Innies with what they're doing? I'm fascinated to know more about what that line meant. But him ultimately getting to the door, pushing Gemma out, and then for Outie Gemma to like see her husband like right there and finally reunited and so close, but there's nothing she can do was just heart-wrenching. But then thinking about like any Mark, like I don't think he even knew what he was going to do in this situation. I don't think this was all pre-planned, right? He takes his sweet time to, we'll call it the equator, like where Helly said he was going to meet her or meet him. He's trying to make this decision. Like I can go out this door and have a life that's not going to be mine, or I can live whatever few remaining minutes I have left on this world as any Mark with the woman I love in Helly. So them kind of making their escape, I thought that was great. I don't know what they're going to do, but I love their escape and I love this scene.
Sure. I wanted him to go with Gemma, but I understand why he made the decision that he did. It's really difficult to essentially kill yourself. Is that the right word? And along those lines, lack of a better word. Tom, I do think the good doctor, as he's screaming, you're going to kill them all, I think he is referring to their innies. Part of me was like, the marching band, great. But then the other part of me was like, no, I think he just means Gemma's innies.
And before we get to the very end of like them doing that like long run and that shot of Helly and Mark, we do get a quick cut of like Milchek essentially becoming the Terminator, and hitting that whole machine down, jumping up super cool superhero style on top of said machine, and then Dylan kind of calling him out, and the whole band is now on their side. I love that like cliffhanger and where that'll lead for season 3.
Sure.
Because I still don't get Milchek, right? Like he was all in on this performance and seemed all in on trying to stop whatever was going on. But we've seen, the cracks in his armor throughout the whole season. So he's still very much an enigma, and I don't know where his mind is for all of this.
Right. I did expect when Dylan was like, you got to go through all of us, or whatever his line is in the whole marching band, that the marching band would have been like, 1, 2, 3, because we just didn't get enough marching band in this episode. Anyways, yeah, I'm interested in what Milchek does. I thought, just from a physical acting standpoint, he was incredible in this episode.
Agreed.
We get a Tom Cruise run down a hall. Just a lot of running, a lot of red light flashing. This almost looked like it was shot like a Soderbergh film. Like this felt like an homage to something, Tom, where they like do the freeze frame and all of that.
Yeah, I think when I was watching some internet videos, I think it's like an homage to like kind of French films. But like they do something very specific here when they are running and they kind of reunite. They change from digital to film. And the episode that we had of like Mark and Gemma and their backstory and their like love story was also shot on film. So like the idea of it kind of changing the tone and changing visually what we're seeing on screen of like kind of the two characters falling in love and them kind of saying F it to the world is beautiful. And it's like a cool way to be able to add a layer to the story without saying anything.
Sure. I just want to go out on the record and say one last time, I'm rooting for Mark and Gemma. And so I'm sure the world loved this, that they were like, oh yeah, he went back for Helly. They're great. Innies aren't real, Tom. I want Audi, Mark, and Gemma, who are real people that live in the real world, to end up together. That's where I'm at.
Okay. That's fair. I would say I'm probably more in the Helly Mark camp. Like these two star-crossed lovers. Let's see what can happen. But like again, from Mark's perspective, and I mean certainly from Helly's, I don't know what they're gonna do here. I don't know where they're running to. They're just trying to spend, I guess, their last moments that they feel they have together. But what's your take, man? Because that's the end. That's the cliffhanger. Where do you see season 3 going, or do you want me to take a stab at it?
Well, like this show often does, whenever we have these like thrilling moments, when we come back, they're just entering the office like nothing happened. So I'm assuming the next cut is them walking into MDR, sitting at their desks and being like, man, what a crazy 5 months, right? And then a marching band comes in and plays for conservatively 45 minutes. I don't know. I'm interested in, so now Gemma's out. So Gemma has got to make her way out of the building and then link up with, I guess, Devin, Cobell. We didn't get enough Rick in. I'm just going to go. I don't even remember if that's his name, but we didn't get enough of him. So they can't just kill these two because Helly is Helena and she's the heir apparent. And then Mark is, I still don't understand why Mark is the most important MDR member. So I don't know. I don't know where we're leading, but I am interested to see where it goes.
Yeah. Were you satisfied by the finale? You feel like it left in a good spot?
Just
like
less marching band.
Did it close up
Tom.
Enough for season 2? Okay.
Yeah, no.
Did it? Yeah.
I'm going to stick around. I mean, season 3 is not going to be out for 3 years, so I don't know if I'm going to remember any of this. But no, I enjoyed this episode immensely.
Yeah, I thought they did a good job of answering enough questions, having a good kind of finality to this season by still giving us a lot of questions to ask. I mean, my assumption, I kind of said it early in the beginning, like now that we have James down on the testing floor or severed floor, and in his line to Helena or Helly, saying he sees her a lot more in what she needs or what
she sees Kier and Helly, not Helena. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm assuming like Helly is going to use that kind of as leverage, and maybe like almost maybe James is going to shut off Audi Helena, and Helly will become like the sole personality, and she'll be able to go topside. So maybe Helly and Any Mark will be kind of the new outies, and they'll be able to explore. I don't know. And then the idea now of it kind of flipping, and now instead of Mark having to help Gemma, now it's Gemma having to help Mark, and see where that's going to all fall out. Because we still have plenty of mysteries with what Lumen's doing. So it's exciting.
Let me ask you that. So the mysteries that we still have, because we've solved what MDR was doing. We've solved the Gemma of it all. We've solved... those were the big ones, and so in the end what we have left is like the bigger world, what Lumen's doing, like what essentially what happens to Mark and Helly. But there was nothing else that was other than like once again filling in the colors of what's happening in the wider world. We've solved it all, right?
No, I think we've solved the idea of what Lumen is trying to do with Cold Harbor and the severed process is just, can we sever somebody to the point where they will be completely separated from their innie and outie, by putting Gemma through the most heart-wrenching moment of her life. So they've kind of like proof cased that. But I think the bigger question we still have is what is going on with the Egans? Like, are they trying to, because I don't think their motivation is just as a pharmaceutical company trying to end pain. I feel like there's still so much going on with that family and their like cult that we are going to continue to explore, figure out what their main objective is.
Okay, let me ask you this, and I think this is the big question we should all be asking. Knowing that they completed Cold Harbor, Tom, are you purchasing stock in Lumen, knowing that that is soon going to be released, that they can remove human pain from society? And once again, are you a buy? Are you a sell? Don't touch? What are you?
No, I can't, because I know too much about the inner workings because we do a podcast, so we're kind of in a black area. We can't invest.
Oh, I'm buying. I'm buying all the Lumen stock, knowing that I think this is going to thrive. In a world that's hurting, I think everyone is going to want something that severs their pain. So this is like getting in on Tylenol or ibuprofen in the beginning, you know? So I'm buying.
All right.
I have always been interested in like this city that is Kier, like what's outside of it, like what does the rest of the world look like? That's not really this show because it keeps it small, it keeps it in a cubicle, like it keeps it to office floors. But I am going to be interested in season 3 if they show us like what Lumen's effect is on the greater world, or if we've just been kind of stuck in this one weird part of Minnesota that like no one else really knows about. So yeah, I'm interested. In 3 years, we'll come back to it. For those of you that are still listening, if we missed something or you'd like to add, by all means, reach out to us. We still answer emails at teambingepodcast@gmail.com. We appreciate you going on this ride. It's been a fun show, and all of my criticisms are surface level. I've enjoyed the show immensely. Tom?
Brilliant. Yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. It's been a fantastic season of television, and yeah, I know we didn't cover season 1, but I'm very happy that we picked up and kind of joined the train for season 2 because it was great. But yeah, follow us on our socials at Team Binge or at Team Binge Podcast. If you could and you enjoyed our coverage for this season, we would greatly appreciate if you go into Apple Podcasts or Spotify, leave us a quick review. It really helps us kind of grow our show. Like I've mentioned on socials, we've got a back catalog of loads of different shows at this point. We'll likely be picking up The Last of Us, season 2 of that. Will probably be the next show that we binge and chat through.
That's on HBO or Max, as they like to call it.
Yes, as they perfectly rebranded it. But yeah, fantastic season 1 for that show, and we're very excited to dive into season 2 as well. So again, thank you all those that joined in on this adventure. It was a fun one, and I'm quite hopeful we don't have to wait 3 years. I think they have officially announced the season 3 is in the writer's room and they're working on it. So hopefully we'll get it in the next year or two.
Sure. Well, Tom, for Team Binge, I've been Julian.
And I have been Tom. Till next show, everybody. Bye-bye.